This is Justin's room. This is our second session, our stories to tell. It happens every third Wednesday of the month. That's 7 o'clock Eastern Time. On the screen is a line drawing of Justin Dart wearing his very famous hat and his glasses and his bolo tie. That was drawn by Teddy based on a photo by Tom Olin. Info on future and past events, registration, playlist, and donation opportunity is available at bit.ly/Justins hyphen room. Register at bit.ly/register Justin, no hyphen. And this event is co-sponsored by the Disability History and Culture Collective, the DHACC, and the I Love You Lead On community. There's also a QR code on this particular screen. Next slide. This particular event, Justin's Room, Our Stories to Tell, has been started to capture stories every third Wednesday of the month. Justin Dart and his wife Yoshiko took a road trip multiple times across the country, sitting with disabled people in every state to hear their challenges, successes, and hopes. They brought these powerful stories to Congress, helping to turn shared dreams into the Americans with Disabilities Act. Bring your words, your poems, your art, your dance, your music, or video, whatever feels right for you. About 8 minutes after we hear from Petra. If you want to share, you can let us know ahead of time. If you wanted to share tonight, you can let us know in the chat or just come and join the Zoom. The mic will stay open as long as folks have something to say. Every story is welcome. We do have an email address, leadon@iloveyou-leadon.com if you have questions. We're not getting a whole lot of emails there, but if you have questions, you can also put them in the chat. Info on future and past events, registration, playlist, and donation opportunity, again, is available at bit.ly/Justins-room. Next slide. Pardon my neighbors with the loud car if you're hearing that. This month, we are going to hear stories about Alice Wong and intersectionality from Petra Kuppers. Looking forward to that. And again, you can find that information about the events at bit.ly/register Justin or bit.ly/Justins-room. Next slide. You can contact us for help or accessibility requests. If you need help accessing this event or want to request a voice option during the presentation, email us at leadon@iloveyou-leadon.com. Next slide. Zoom etiquette and access. During the presentation, all Zoom attendees will be muted to support access and reduce background noise. If you need to use voice to communicate during the presentation, email us and we'll arrange a separate voice space just for that. After the presentation ends, we'll open up mics for conversation. This will be sort of recorded, but not recorded. I don't know how you did that last time, Sharon, so I'll let you talk about that if we need it. One voice at a time. Chat comments will be read aloud to provide access. If you don't want the chat read aloud, please private message one of the hosts. Next slide. Accessibility info. ASL is provided for the presentation and will be spotlighted. Auto captions are available and can be viewed on screen or as a transcript. In the Zoom toolbar, there's a CC option. If it's not there, click the 3 dots for more options and locate it there. The ability to show, hide, or adjust captions is there, as well as the option to view captions as a transcript. In keeping with I Love You Lead On and DHACC's goal of making conversations about disability available and accessible to all, we invite our ASL interpreter to participate fully, asking questions and joining the discussion if and when they have them. Next slide. Justin's Room sessions are recorded. All Justin's Room sessions are recorded and will be available on our playlist within a few days with corrected captions and transcripts. And again, the playlist is at bit.ly/Justins-room, and there's a QR code on this screen. You can help make the space accessible I Love You Lead On community and all of its various projects are volunteer-led. We have a variety of ways you can support our efforts to provide full access. Our work includes the Disability History and Cultural Collective, the DHACC, this space, Deba's Room, Judy's Room, Justin's Room, and other events on the horizon. And you can donate at iloveyou-leadon.com/donate. And there's also a QR code. Next slide. We have 2 email groups. Disability History and Culture Collective has 2 Google groups for disability-related conversations. We have the DHACC Disability Museum group. That is focused on information about museums, exhibits, and collections, whether they're formal, informal, or in progress. And then the second one, Disability Advocates-Lead On, is the general disability community discussions list, events, resources, and current issues. And you can choose one or both, depending on your interests. For instructions and more information, visit https://bit.ly/DHACC-Google groups. And there's a QR code. For updated information, schedule, and registration details, visit www.iloveyou-leadon.com/Justin or bit.ly/Justin's-room. Past episodes, our very past episode that we've got is up there. Will soon be available at the playlist on YouTube, bit.ly/Justin's Room playlist. And we also have a new feedback form for our events. Share your feedback about this event at https://bit.ly/ILYLO-DHACC event feedback. And there are 2 QR codes on the slide. If we need to put those slides back up, we can do that at the end. And with that, we will turn it over to Petra.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks again for having me. Maybe someone could tell me, do I have 8 minutes then myself? Is that right? Is that what I should be doing? 8 minutes.
No.
Why don't I introduce you first, Petra, before you go in?
Susan
I think people need to know. I met Petra very early on in my self-advocacy when I was still at a point where I hadn't yet discovered the beauty of disability to the degree that she had. And I can remember being a little overwhelmed by what she did and thinking that she thought it was just too good. She put her body in ways that I never would consider doing. And I was amazed that she would do the things that she would do. And she talked about disability with such beauty and grace. And she just...
That was such a sweet introduction. I'm glad Michelle can still hear me. Okay, good. That was so lovely. I'd love to hear where that went.
This is Alice. I do know that not too long ago, Susan was having trouble with her mic and couldn't get back on. So, Petra, you might want to
just go
do your own until Susan rejoins us. Hopefully it's just a technical issue.
That is great. And can you tell me, is 8 minutes what I should be aiming for? Is that right?
I think that you can talk as much as you would like about
all right.
Alice and whatever intersectionality experiences. Yes, no, we had set that for participants after the lead storyteller would be on. And so you can talk.
The one other thing, I do not want to be here under false pretenses, but Susan asked me to do this long before there was a theme for this particular session. So she had asked me to do this session, and I'm very glad to do so. I unfortunately did not intersect with Alice Wong. We were in Berkeley for a very short time. We were there at the similar sort of time, but I actually never met Alice Wong herself. So I really just don't want to be here under false pretenses. And I did write that to Susan that I'd have never met her. So I can't tell a story about Alice Wong. And so we want to make sure that there's a lot of space for people who have met her.
Right,
But
right.
I am,
And we did have that after she talked to you about it, because
yeah.
I believe Alice was still with us when we started talking about Justin's Room. So anything you can share, and then others can
Right.
join.
I am indeed also someone who collects stories, just like Alice. So there's strong connections, and intersectionality is certainly what I'm the materials that I'm bringing to you today. That is indeed the central focus of that work. So I think what I have to share with you today is very much in the spirit of what Alice also shared in her Disability Visibility project. So Alice was an amazing collector of stories. That was the way that her activism worked. She collected so many stories. She allowed people to record stories. I remember seeing the booths in the Bay Area. The Visibility Project had booths that you could go and you could record your stories, and it was wonderful. It's a wonderful story, and of course the publications that emerged from this that she edited are powerful. Many of us are using them in teaching, so her legacy lives on. And I'm really hoping that we get to hear stories from people who actually worked with her directly. Now, as Susan told you, I've been involved in disability culture for a long time myself. So I'm just on tour right now. I just had 2 wonderful days in Detroit, working with disabled and non-disabled people, both at Wayne State University and also in the community at a beautiful theater in Detroit called the Playhouse. And people came together. And we also use storytelling as our core mechanism, and it's artful storytelling. So my work leans into dance and poetry. And what I do is I host other people's stories. So I create frameworks. I create what you'll see in a minute. Uh, at the moment, a tree world with portals in it, and inside these portals are disabled people's stories. So there's something about the mechanism that is quite similar to what Alice did and what so many activists in our world are doing, finding ways of framing our gorgeous experiences in ways that are powerful, that can be shared in their beauty, in their depth, in pain, and in joy. So the pieces that I'm going to share with you today come from a project called Planting Disabled Futures. Planting Disabled Futures. Yeah, like plants. I love how the ASL shows us planting, shows us the root going into the earth. That is such a powerful and gorgeous ASL sign for this project. So thank you so much for sharing that. It's such a powerful image. Planting. Thank you. So planting disabled futures means that we're looking at the intersection of environmental issues, disability culture, and performance technology, interestingly enough. And the project is a virtual reality project. So kind of weird, kind of, how does that relate to anything? That's what I'm going to share with you through a number of stories that are not necessarily my own. It is an intersectional project in the sense that many different voices from many different perspectives are coming together and sharing uh, both pain, oppression, and joy and pleasure through their stories. So to get going, I'm going to share the first video. The videos, Michelle, the videos are all subtitled, so it should be fine. So we should be able to share the video without without keeping the Michelle highlighted. But whatever it is, however you're doing it works for me. So here is the first video. Planting Disabled Futures fly through February 2025. The core 3D tree with pink leaves, purple trunks, mushrooms, fireflies. You move through this environment, around deep into the roots, and everywhere are portals. And you can access these portals and look inside them. We're flying with fireflies, more mushrooms, more trees, the trunk, up into the canopy and into one of the portals. And there we're seeing a 360 video environment at the level of the roots, at the level of the soil.
touching a bamboo, which feels like someone has written something here, and I don't know what that is. And I feel the texture of bamboo is really interesting to me. But I can't find a leaf. Here is the leaf. Bamboo reminds me of home. That's why I love bamboo. And I'm touching the leaves one by one.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks so much. You can take that off right now. Yay. Thank you. All right. I'm just waiting for Michelle. Here you go. Thank you. Thank you. So this gives you a good sense of how the project works. So you come and visit with us. We're sitting in a circle, and we're all telling stories of plant elders, of plants that have made a difference to our lives. And through the telling of plant stories, we also, of course, tell disability stories. You know, it's just a different way of sharing our life experiences. So I'm going to share with you one or two more of those, so you get a further sense of how it all operates. And you'll see already that if Alice's work was very much about the written word and creating these wonderful edited collections and the Disability Visibility Project, this work foregrounds poetry, it foregrounds movements, video, you know, the core presence, this presence on video. A lot of the portals are just one shot. I think there's maybe we need some muting here. Shall I mute that? Okay, I muted it. Right, so we have presence on the screen, and that is for me one of the core aspects of doing media and disability culture work. How can we be with one another? You know, it's hard for us to get together in person. Even before the pandemic, it was very hard to get together in person. Now it's even harder. Funding also is very restricted. As we know, many of us don't have access to travel far and wide. I'm a researcher at a big university, and I do find funding, and I go on these tours where I can share with many different people. So I have house parties. We get invited by fellow disabled people. Whenever I go somewhere, I'm happy to take up an invitation of a fellow disabled person's home. I come to them and we bring the headsets. I have 2 access doulas usually with me, 1 or 2 access doulas who help people into the headsets if they never had the experience of virtual reality before. It's a very intimate and playful engagement. And the people who organize these house parties invite their friends, you know. So we just had a wonderful house party in Berkeley at a disabled poet's home, Carol Dorf. And Carol invited many of her friends, and we sat in their living room and had a just absolutely marvelous time talking about the relationship between plants and our disabled lives. Many of us talked about plant medicine. Many of us talked about painkillers. I'm sure for many of you, this is also an important project. I myself, I am a pain crip, so painkillers is a big topic in my life. Others talk about the relationship between plants and different kinds of homes, different kinds of experiences of being a child. I'm going to show you another one, so you get more of a sense of how that kind of storytelling works. And I'm going to once again drop that into the chat. So if someone could just once again share that for me, I'd be very grateful.
And a curry plant, green, multiple segments. Ashwini Basi reaches up and pulls down gently on one of the twigs.
The curry leaves sway in the wind that comes in through the open window. Outside, it's colder than the temperature it can survive in. I sit still, watch the leaves unlearn what they were born to do. survive in a monsoon thunderstorm and the flood of the river. I'm alone here in this glass house with the transplanted plants. Immigrants sometimes have overactive immune systems. Their bodies turn on themselves for the lack of clarity on what is foreign and what is not. Do you remember the soil you sprouted from? Or do you forget the scent of the earth you called home, the moist warmth of the love you left behind, the tropical abandonment of desire? The curry tree looks listless under glass. There are 2 saplings near its roots. I wish I could take them home with me, give them a life full of scents and sounds that they are meant to hear. The thunderstorms, the sound of the hornbill as it descends, wingtip rustling against the tile roof, my mother calling out to me to pluck a few dark green curry leaves from the lowest branch and bring the sprig to her as she's waiting for the coconut oil in the earthen pot to reach the right temperature. I pluck the leaves, hastily run to my mother. She separates the leaves, tosses them into the tempering. The leaves hiss and the oil splatters. The kitchen fills with the scent of my childhood.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. Yay. Now, if you are in the 3D world, if you do use the headset with us, then you can actually get really close up to this beautiful visual poem that Ashwini has created. So you can zoom into the video and really move along the lines of the video. So it's like a form of screen reader technology in a 3D setting. So once again, as always, disabled people do lead the way in these kinds of technologies. Just like Zoom was used by disabled people, or technologies like Zoom were so important to us as disabled people long before the pandemic, and now everybody's using it. Same is true, of course, with these screen reader technologies and other kinds of access provisions. So that also comes into the project a lot. All right, I'm just going to close with one last little video from the series. So just give you one more example. This one is a little bit more movement-based, but it's movement of just hands. It's a hand dance, and it's a hand dance by the Detroit River. So the place where I live myself here on Anishinaabe territory in Michigan. And yeah, I'm just going to share this last one with you. And it links really well with the theme of intersectionality, because you get to hear about the importance of language and naming in this video. I think you'll find that interesting. I'm going to pop that in here. Here we go. And that one's about 2.5 minutes long. And I invite you all to think with the phytoplankton and the hand dance. Enjoy.
We are hand dancing in a crypt drift by the Detroit River, flowing with the watery inhabitants. In the sun-kissed waters live phytoplanktons. In the Greek language, phyto means plant, and plankton means made to wander or drift. Join us, dear Somanaut. Join the dance of the phytoplankton in the Detroit River as we stand on Anishinaabe territory, as we witness the river's long history and the ongoing reclamation from settler industrial pollution. Cyclotella, Pleurosigma, Senedesmus, Cybella, Dinobryon, Synedra ulna, Asterionella, Anabaena, Certatella, Cyclotella, Aphanizomenon, Fragillaria, Pediastrum, Eunotia, data based on a 2021 study by Adrian A. Vasquez, Abul Ahmed, Victor D. Carmona Galindo, and Balvinder Segal.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Great. All right. So that was the last of the videos. So you've now heard plant elder stories. You saw them, you heard them. We've heard about the curry plant. We touched the bamboo, and we danced with the phytoplankton in the Detroit River. And so I'll end with the question that I ask all participants in a Planting Disabled Future project. Who is your plant elder? And what do the words plant elder mean to you? So that is usually our prompt for storytelling. And I'm glad to give this little presentation in the spirit of Alice Wong's wonderful work in collecting stories by disabled people. So thank you so much for having me, and thanks for listening. And I'm looking forward to hearing your stories. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things I was struck by as the plants were being touched, gentleness with which they're being touched. And we don't think of plants as being something we nurture with our touch, but it was almost like a spiritual experience. I mean, it was a spiritual experience, touching the plant, and you could see how they were giving feedback. And it wasn't a one-way touching experience. It was two-way.
Yeah,
I love the plants themselves were interacting with the person who was touching them.
Thank you, Susan. I love that you're picking up on that, because that is indeed very important to our project. So we, as well as asking that question about who's your plant elder, once we go round the circle and everybody talks about their plant elder, we then move in honor of the plant elder. So the instruction is to bring that plant elder into the room with us by touching in with their non-human energy. So not just projecting what we think about onto them, but to see what kind of life we can touch as humans in what you're calling a spiritual way, which is exactly how I would conceive of this as well, a kind of a communication that goes beyond a human communication. I think that's beautifully said. I love that you are picking up on that, and that is indeed, that's how it feels to do these projects. One of the core experiences of this project was in 2024, when I was a artist in resident at the Huntington Botanical Gardens, which is in California. And it's actually it's of course a sad story. This was the year before the big fires in LA. And Altadena, the place where I stayed, where I had a wonderful Airbnb with a lovely family in Altadena, that place burned down. So just a few months after I was there, that place burned down, as so many houses did. And so did one of the sites where I recorded, which was a site that Octavia Butler's mother was living nearby, and Octavia herself had clearly been to this park many times too. So many sites had been lost in those fires, but we were there just the year before, and while I was there for a month. I had 18 separate engagements with different local disabled artists. So, and when people decided to take up my invitation and come visit with me at the gardens, I got them free access, which is cool, right? Free ticket for the Botanical Gardens. That costs some money. So I got us all a free ticket. And then we would go into the gardens together. And then I would ask people, well, what is your plant elder? Or what's your favorite plant here in the garden? And people would take me to that plant. And that's how Akila's video was created. She took me to that bamboo garden. And so I have these beautiful little jewel objects of people storytelling through their bodies, their relationship to the plants. And yes, just like you say, Susan, it feels like a two-way communication. It's by no means just our projection onto them. If we are with the plants, if we drop into their time, which also links in really interesting ways to the notion of crib time, of course, if we can drop into different temporalities, we can be in beautiful, energetic touch. Thank you.
The other thing it reminded me of is when I was a child, my family moved briefly to Peru.
Mm.
And I spent all this time in the backyard touching the plants because they were so different than anything I'd ever experienced before. And I was so fascinated with just spending time just running my fingers up and down and hearing the way some of them squeaked. Other ones would sort of ooze when you would touch them or would bead up. And there were all these different ways that the plants interacted with me that were things that at least my American plants never, or I never discovered that they could do it. But somehow being in a foreign country and exploring these plants this way, it was, I mean, I still remember, and it's 60 years ago, and I can still remember how the plants felt.
That's gorgeous. Thank you for sharing that story with me. That would be a perfect story for one of our plant elder circles. How about somebody else? Does somebody else have a plant elder story here that you would like to share? I would love to hear them.
Okay, I will contribute. I thought those videos were extremely beautiful, and I was, felt very privileged to watch them, in part because actually, like, I have been having a moment with bamboo recently. So I discovered bamboo tea, and I've been using like bamboo paper products, and I feel like the combination of textures, and materials is could be magical somehow, or medicinal would probably be the more appropriate word in this context. In terms of a plant elder, I almost don't understand the concept, except to say because I don't acknowledge elders in my, kind of human life. And so I really respect certain ideas I've seen out of indigenous community around the idea of plant consent, and myself have observed vegetal sociality. But if I were to choose plant elder or someone that I really admire almost on the level of, you know, an ancestor I've never met or something like that, it would be the cactus. Because I've just had experiences of watching them, uh, you know, like they're so vibrant with life, using very little water, unlike most life that I know, or you know, mold, which is a source of chronic illness for me. And I've also, yeah, they're connected to parts of my, you know, life history that are narratively significant.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. Oh, thank you so much for bringing the cactus image into this. It's actually interesting. Just 2 days ago, as I said, we were in Detroit and we had these lovely circles. And someone there also brought in the cactus. And Detroit is such a different environment. You know, in Michigan, of course, we have very different plants. This person grew up in Tucson, Arizona, so had a deep relationship to cacti and was missing. It's just like Susan was just talking about plants in Peru, right? And how different those plants are. So the kind of environmental conditions that the cacti stands for as well, the kind of that the cacti lives in, was something this person brought so beautifully into the space for us. That was very moving, actually.
That's
And
uncanny because
yeah,
Tucson is in the news right now with the disappearance of a Today Show anchor, and
oh yeah.
I'm following the story just because of all of the different connections it has. So I'm kind of uncanny for you to bring it up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and there's many connections, right? There's a wonderful one of our the people in my circles. Naomi Ortiz is a wonderful disability activist who lives in Tucson. So, and she writes with my wife, who's Stephanie Height, who's a poet and a dancer. And so Naomi and Stephanie they write together every month, and they constantly exchange plant stories. Actually, it's very interesting because Naomi doesn't have a good sense of like plants that live in a river that like we do phytoplankton stories. We work with the Huron River, we're like very much based in Michigan, and Stephanie is struggling to at times to get a sense of the kind of the desert plants that Naomi is writing about. So they're both eco poets, and they're actually wonderfully paired with one another because they communicate to each other the different life conditions of course, plants, but also humans. What it means to be a disabled person in the desert, what it means to be a disabled person here in Michigan.
What is Stephanie's name again?
Stephanie Height.
Oh, sorry, Naomi's name,
Oh,
the
Naomi.
Tucson person. Yeah,
I
sorry.
put them both in. Naomi Ortiz. Naomi Ortiz.
Yeah, I was already watching what was happening in Arizona because one of the lions from my local zoo in Chicago was transferred to Phoenix, and he has the same name as Peri Peri chili sauce. Speaking of plants, also cool, like not with spikes like a cactus, but sharp sharp in its own way. Chili is a great plant.
Exactly. Great. Yeah. Culinary plants, like medicinal plants, culinary plants, they all come into these beautiful storytellings. Also, when I say plant elders, some people go to plants and some people go to human elders. So we've had many curanderas, we've had many healers, we've had many people, people who run pharmacies, many people bring personal ancestors or people who taught them about growing food. All of those things come into it. Because again, here where we live, we have a very strong community food, community garden tradition. So people speak a lot about that as well in the circle. It's great. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to share a plant elder story? All right. Otherwise, maybe we should put a bow
Hello,
around the
this
tree.
is Grover. Can y'all hear Grover?
I can hear you, Grover.
Well, very good. I have a, I'm, si- I'm sitting here in Atlanta metropolitan area, musing over how I can, bring something to the conversation. And I have it. Many years ago, I think it was on Union Street, I bought a sort of service for four from I think it was the Blue Swan there in San Francisco. Anyway, it was the Nineveh pattern, the goddess of water plants. And I mean, that is here with me. I've downsized, and I certainly haven't gotten rid of my Nineveh pattern. And it enters, as a matter of fact, my pancakes, all of my pancakes have faces. Of course, all pancakes have faces, just as all clouds. But anyway, so in my kitchen over in Midtown Atlanta, I've sold the house. That was where Lois Curtis had her studio. So in my efforts to sort of build an inventory of iPhone images, I have lots of my breakfasts there, and it always has the Nineveh. I always have one, either the knife or the fork or what have you. Trust me, I can drag anything into interrelate many things. And as a matter of fact, the introduction that I was going to feature on the previous Deborah's room that was to be about Lois Curtis. Um, I there was something on NPR one morning while I was having breakfast, and it was a young lady with a disability, and she was essentially telling her story of her first kiss, and and so I was walking around the house. And then I was walking into the studio where Lois Curtis, it was my dining room. And, I was talking about Lois, as I always do. But anyway, I will shush in a minute. Actually, I guess I should. But the idea and see, I'm in the process of writing my memoir, and my ancestors in colonial times were sort of the inventors of the Baptists. They were separate Baptists from Connecticut. And so, in my sort of musing over their traveling from Connecticut, they actually, during the French and Indian War, they were missionaries to the, I think, Mohawk Indians. But anyway, they came down, and they came down as far as Coyote Creek in Georgia, and that's where they settled. And so, in my images, I have imagined their buckboard, coming down from however they came down. But I've had a sort of a subterranean environment that's tendrils and things, almost growing along with their path, and I've certainly incorporated them with the Nineveh pattern, the goddess of water. Anyway, I'll stop. Does that qualify? I mean,
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely. That sounds
it's
great. Yes. We'll just get glimpses into all our lives and these interesting connections. That's what we're trying to
yes,
do,
yes, you're
right?
so
We're,
right. This is such
we're
an
creating a
exciting.
web. That's right. It's a web of
Thank you.
connections. Thank you. Thanks, Grover.
Thank you very much.
And I think some people left us on the hour at 8 o'clock. So, yeah. Is there anybody else who would like to share a story? It doesn't have to be associated with plant elders. Maybe I should put a bow around that one and, just let you speak. Are there stories where do people remember Alice Wong?
Pam, did you have a video to start? Did you have a video story?
Sorry, I don't know who just spoke right now. Who was that? I can't. Was it addressed to me?
That was Susan. She was talking.
And someone has a video story?
Well, I
She was
noticed briefly that a video clip came on and it said it was Pam's
Oh, yeah. Oh,
video.
Pam. Sorry, I didn't hear the name.
So
Yes, Pam
I
Hunter
thought
is
she
here.
might have had a video she wanted to play.
Hi, this is Pam. No, I'm a longtime friend of Grover's who sent me the invitation, and I saw it about 30 seconds before I joined, and 30 seconds after I joined is when Grover just was able to share his little piece. So thanks for letting me pop over in between other meetings. But I received a message to start my video, and what I did was respond with later.
Lovely. I'm so glad you got to hear your friend's story.
Petra, this is Alice. I'm just marveling at your art. And I'm wondering if this has been the focus, plant elders and plant stories, since I'm new to your work. Has that been the basis of your work for a long time, or how did you come to this particular work that you're doing now?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Well, I've been at it for a long time, I guess. And when I first became a disability culture artist, I was like many of us, I was working outdoors. And now we're still working outdoors, right? Now we're working outdoors because of environmental toxins, because of COVID, because of, all the things that are going on. Then I was working outdoors because I couldn't get into most galleries, theaters, and dance spaces. I used at that time I was using I was using not a not a power wheelchair, a manual wheelchair. Sorry. At that time when I was younger, I was using a manual wheelchair, and it was impossible to get into places. Then for a while I was using a power wheelchair. At the moment, I get around with canes and with my scooter. And now, of course, many more places are actually physically accessible. So I can work indoors, but I still mainly work with people outdoors. So plants have been very important to my life. You just mentioned the art that's around me. The art here is actually not plants, they're rocks. So I'm painting a lot of rocks. It's kind of one of the things I do. This is more my own practice. So the Plant Elder Storytelling Project is where I'm holding people under the umbrella of these plant elders. The previous project was the Cripmat Archive Dances that also had a strong environmental story going on. We were looking at the asylum garden that Václav Nijinsky, the ballet dancer, that he was where he was when he was going through his asylum treatment. I'm not going to tell that story because it's an upsetting story and not something I need to share here without a trigger warning. But we used old photographs of the asylum where he was incarcerated, and then worked with the plants that we could see in these old 100-year-old photographs. So yes, I often use plant stories as a way of sharing disability stories. I worked earlier in my career, I worked a lot in asylums, and I work with people who used to be incarcerated in asylums. Um, and that could be people with cognitive differences, it could be people with mental health differences. There's many different reasons why people were put into asylums, of course. And when I work in those spaces, I rarely work indoors, again, access, but also because of the kind of toxic load of those historic sites. Instead, I often work with people in the in between spaces, the kind of third space between the asylum here and the public out here. We often work in asylum gardens. So I've worked in the asylum garden at Seacliff, which is in New Zealand, Aotearoa. That was the largest asylum in the Southern Hemisphere. And I worked with people deemed to have cognitive differences who were incarcerated there. And that asylum was shut down quite a long time ago, but there are still survivors around, and we invited survivors to come and have a memory ritual inside that garden. So we worked with the plants, that many of them had actually work to nourish, like oftentimes when you're in an asylum, horticultural therapy or else free labor in the garden is very much part of, or was very much part of what you do in an asylum. So yeah, in many, many different ways, the stories of plants, the stories of disabled people are intertwined. So many of our lives are lived outdoors because we can't get inside. But now my current project, rocks. I have a lot of rocks around me and I love painting them. I love painting the invisible colors of rocks. Thank you for that question. It was a lovely question.
Well, and I'll follow that up with, this is Alice again, of as a child, were you um, experiencing lots of sensory experiences that we all had as children when we were outside a little bit more than kids are today? Was that just something that came to you, or it was something that was just there as a part of your childhood experience and you carried that into adulthood? Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah. I did grow up in a very rural environment. So yesterday in our sharing circle in Detroit at one of the Planting Disabled Futures sharing circles, I talked about touching the roots in this German forest. I grew up near, very, very close to this forest. And so I would go there. And as I mentioned that I'm a pain crip, so I've had a painful embodiment all my life, which means that I often spend a lot of time sitting in one spot. Other people go for a hike, and I just hang out often at the edges of a forest. And I have the time to pay attention to plants. I have time to pay attention to rocks. You often see me sitting somewhere drawing a rock or drawing a plant. So yes, as a child also, I had time to be with plants and to be in their time signature, and oftentimes a bit separate from human time signatures because humans were faster than I was. We're moving, we're walking, we're hiking. German culture means a lot of hiking, and hiking was not very accessible to me. I enjoy being outdoors, but I can't walk long distances. So that was a real issue when I was a child. Took them a long time to properly diagnose me. So when I was a little one, um, I constantly broke my legs, my arms and my legs, but no one was really followed up on that. This is like rural Germany, and somehow you would think now people would take a kid more often to the doctor to figure out what the heck is going on, but that was just not what was happening then at that time. But I do appreciate those times in nature, and I have developed an art practice out of that. And I share that now, of course, with many other disabled people who have very similar experiences. So the people whose names I put into the chat here, both Naomi and Stephanie, are also in different ways very attuned to the environments that they're in. And I think many disabled people have that attunement to the world, just again, because of time signature, because of the way that we're often left on the edges. And what's on the edges? The weeds, the rocks, the edge of the forest. That's where many of us get to hang out. Does anybody else here have a childhood memory of those kinds of experiences of being in nature? That might be something that might be interesting to share with one another.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
So, my growing up memory was about when they would come to turn over the land before they planted the bean sprouts. Because there were soybeans that they were growing. And I love the feeling between my toes and how it was soft and I could clean it. But then also when the bean sprouts grew up, I love to hide in them or just feel them touch my body. So I don't know if it was just because I love the soil or if it was the plants or just the full process of the beginning to the end.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's such a sensory experience, right? I feel it between my toes right now. Thank you. Yes, we have such strong sensory experiences, and now as we're adults, we rarely get to touch soil, right? With our feet, particularly wet soil, that squishy feeling. That's something kids explore, but it's really, really, really fun to explore that as an adult, particularly when you have a attuned nervous system, when sometimes the nervous system can be too attuned and it's too much pain around, but that attunement also means we can have these experiences that otherwise only kids usually have. So thank you so much for sharing that, Michelle. Thank you, Pam. Pam just wrote in the chat, thank you for the kind welcome and the lovely chance to listen and enjoy. Goodbye, all. Thanks for joining us, Pam.
When I was a child, I spent a lot of time in graveyards. Every summer, my grandma, my great aunt, and sometimes our great grandma would go on genealogy trips. And we would spend a lot of time in graveyards exploring, trying to find tombstones that related to our family. But we also spent an awful lot of time looking for them, not finding them, but looking at the terrain, looking at where stones were buried, and was that a stone worth digging up and deciding whether that might be a family stone that was there, or should we look elsewhere? And trying to feel, I can remember trying to feel my ancestors in the graveyard, that somehow they would speak to me and that they would tell me where they were. And I can remember sitting by stones and I was fairly young. I don't think I went on any of these trips after the age of 12. But I would run my fingers in the dirt around the tombstones. And somehow I felt like I was connecting with the person underneath by running my fingers through the dirt. That somehow that was a conduit to where they were. And I'd always get criticized, it's like, you're getting filthy. Your clothes are a mess. But it never stopped me from doing it because it felt so unifying with them. I felt like I knew them through the dirt, that somehow they passed something on to me. And I've always felt very close to my ancestors in ways that most people that I know don't, and I've never completely understood it. But I think part of it is spending time in the graveyards and trying to connect with them that way. And, feeling their stones and trying to sense who they were. Why did they pick this spot? Did it have anything to do with who they were? What did they say about them? And then running my fingers around in the dirt. It felt very right and very wholesome to me. I took a class on death and dying when I was in college, and we went to a graveyard and explored them. They tried to get the class to that point where we were experiencing graveyards positively. And for me, it was instantaneous. But most people found them scary and ugly and places they wanted to get out of as quickly as possible and couldn't find any peace there. And I've always felt a certain peace in graveyards that I don't find anywhere else.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. That's powerful and a really wonderful way of thinking about the relationship between soil and human generations. So, thank you.
Michelle, do you want to step out of your ASL interpreter stance? You don't have to, but if you want to.
So you do know that I think that most people always do not think, like you said, about the plants talking back, where they actually do, because if you relate with them, they grow better, they look better, they get larger, they inhabit your space. But then they also, some of them help you breathe better, and you can put them beside your bed, and then you'll have a better sleep. It won't be a sleepless night. It'll be a peaceful night when you have them in your bed. But then also just looking at what a peace lily is, or philodendron, or a spider plant. There's so many different plants that we can look at, just like you were talking about the plankton in the river. It's there for a purpose. It's not just there just to be there, but it has a purpose that it serves. So each plant has a purpose, whether it's medicinal, whether it's beauty, whether it's um, like turmeric is a plant, but we don't look at it as a plant because it has this odd shape, but it has to grow. So, but it helps with pain, and it helps with your joints. And so, listening to your stories about um, plants and plant elders, you're like, which one do I really relate to? Because my daughter has a tattoo full of plants. And what she did was each person that meant something to her, she put that flower on her arm to represent them. So she really connected them to your story, where this is people that supported her to protect her or to support her through life. So she used their plant elder, even though they didn't know that that's what she was doing. That's what she did when she used it as her arm. So it's just amazing how we can connect different things to what we've experienced. Like Susan was saying, the graveyard gives her peace. For other people, like, yeah, I'm not gonna hang out there. But some people find peace at the water. And so it's just amazing to hear the stories and hear how we as people that do not have disabilities don't look at the small things, where people that have disabilities, like you were saying, you all end up at the edge of the forest, where everybody else can go in because they can get over the rough terrain, but you have to look at the forest from the outside. You have to look at the rough terrains, whether it's the hills or the mountains, and then it makes you think about, if you all can look and see the positive side, why can't we? Why? And then sometimes I think, like, how did I get to have this awesome job where I got to meet these awesome people in 2020, and I'm still connected after 6 years? That's the beautiful part.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for that story. I love the tattoo story. Also think about how ink is so often made from botanical ingredients, right? Botanical or geological earth materials. That's the origins of much ink. So that's interesting too. Thank you.
I don't think people think about that, because if you think about where ink came from, it came from really like people using it. So when you look, well, I can't think of their names, but when women become mature in a certain culture, they get a tattoo right here. And to them, it's really not a tattoo, but it is a maturity level that they've reached, and it's honoring for them to get that tattoo. So it's amazing where some people have made it a bad label or stigmatism, where other people, that's an honoring thing. Or you look at Dwayne Johnson, where he has a tribal tattoo here. And so I think in each cultural is different. And then I even have a friend where she's a vet, and so she has a tattoo that covers her scars from her being in the war. And so I think people look at things differently depending on their experiences.
I agree. Thank you. Yeah. A
Just
moko.
me,
I remember
just
that from New Zealand. Women with their mokos.
yes.
Yeah. Polynesian
And I
culture.
love your glasses.
Thank you.
So Susan will tell you I never have on the same glasses. I always have different ones.
Mm. That's lovely. Thank you. All right. Well, people, we've lost a few people along the way as it's getting later and later. Is there anybody else who wants to share a story? Or shall we close this lovely Justin's room and this honoring of storytelling in Alice Wong's name?
This is Alice again, Petra. I'm full of questions this evening. This whole concept is fascinating to me, and I do know, we all have those memories of different flowers and different flowers I look forward to that are seasonal. I love the chicory that most people call a weed in Tennessee, but and the Queen Anne's lace. I remember those from my childhood too, and sunflowers, all the wildflowers. And I'm just wondering about kids' experiences now, and especially kids who have disabilities, who have mobility issues, who may not be in rural environments where they get to experience this, and what that would look like for them. If someone, I always made sure that my students who had vision impairments as well as cognitive disabilities had time, outside, even if it was just a little grass area outside my classroom. But for other kids, I just wonder how your work could be extrapolated, and if you have any thoughts on that, or if you know of educators that might be doing that.
Yeah, I think there's a whole movement in education to get students and kids to connect back with nature. It is indeed such a deficit for so many kids. I teach a queer eco arts class, trans queer eco arts, which is fabulous. And I have a lot of education students in that class who are getting a sense of how they can create pedagogies that allow people to go outside and learn in nature. So much indigenous wisdom is based on outdoor teaching as well. So much interesting work on forest pedagogy. There's there's a really rich field of work that engages with that, and I think it's really vital that we do get all of us out there, elders, middle-aged people, teenagers, kiddies, everybody. It's just so we get so much from being outdoors. Having said that, the last few days we were here under an air quality warning because the snow melted too quickly and all the toxins that were in the snow got released too quickly without wind, and we actually had terrible air here. So for the last few days, not so much, not going outside, no, less of that. But on the whole, just even finding connections to the trees and the plants that are endangered but through climate catastrophe right now. Many of the plants here around us, I'm sure the same as wherever you all um, are struggling with climate change, right? Right now, as I said today, here it was 65 degrees. It's the middle of February. It's ridiculous. So we do need to find ways of connecting young people with the environment, because they are the people who will do something about it. We've certain generations have had the privilege to mess up the environment, and now it behooves the younger people to find a way back from that. So using whatever means possible to connect young ones up again is, I think, fabulous. And the virtual reality world that I've been describing, that I've been sharing with you, is going to be available this year on Meta, on the actual website. So it will be available to all the youngsters. And the people who have headsets are the youngsters. They're not necessarily us, right? I don't know how many people here have a headset. Maybe not so much. Usually it's younger people who have headsets, who have virtual reality headsets. And they will be able to work with these to get a sense of this kind of a web. So it's always really interesting when I have kids, school children that get to experience that get to play with a headset. They find it very easy to play with the headset, and then we do the plant elder question, and then we'll see what comes up there. What are the kind of plant elders that kids bring up? That is a very interesting question. What plant names do they know? What plants do they connect with? Often house plants. So I do so agree with you. It's great and important to get people and get kids out there into the world.
Petra, I wonder if before you leave us, if you have a favorite of your poems. Do you have a favorite poem?
My own poem, some other person's poem, my poems. Poems, sure. I'm happy to read a poem. Let me see. Yes, because apart from this dancing and this all this work, I'm also a poet, I guess. Yes, let me good. So I already told you about my personal obsession with rocks. So I mainly shared with you the things that I do with other people, this whole plant project, Planting Disabled Futures. Yay. Love the image, Michelle, that you're offering me. That's right. Love that. It's so cool. Excellent. So my personal work. So poetry is something that feels more personal to me, right? I still work in collaboration, but I write by myself, just like I paint by myself. So these are all rock paintings. And I can share with you one of these. So this is a sonnet. It's called Geode Dance. And the geode, not everybody might know what a geode is. So a geode is a hollow in the rock. So when lava cools, there might be a hollow in the rock. And then as superheated water shoots through that rock, minerals might lay down on the edges of this geode, of this rock bubble, and comes out in crystals, like amethyst geodes or quartz crystals. So you have a hollow in the rock that people find and then break open, and in there are these gorgeous crystals, these sharp-edged crystals. So imagine that hollow in a lava rock. That is the image that I'm trying to work with here in this poem. Geodance. My knee reflects in the geode's pink, dim, swollen light. I dance, a curve, twist, fly over the sharp point, pivot. No far down weight bores with might into my tired bone. So I hover, gravity's lift, riveted in the earth, each breath, suspension. Bone balloon sails through rock, earth and night, digested soil and hardened sand. Pools in crystal offer soft landing, soft takeoff through fissure, all open to flock. Tissue releases orange fire, cools in the underwater stream. White pain flows like lava from my joints. To temper, vanish in silk blue mineral waters, a compress of the deep, whimper as I float, kin to worm and beetle, embrace, caress this healing trance. Abandon gravity, let the scarlet blood stream delta, inflamed spot soothed in the shelter of blue, deep black. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. Yay.
That was beautiful. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
This is Grover. I was away for, I had an electronic catastrophe, but here I am in my kitchen with a short cord. Beautiful, beautiful sonnet. I just wanted to, sort of interrelatedness in the county where my ancestors from colonial times settled. It's in what's called Columbia County. It's right there near Augusta. And then the county above that is Lincoln County. And Lincoln County is world famous for people who, you know, go in and dig for stones. It's called Graves, Graves Mountain. And Tiffany's pretty much controlled it, from about 45. I think they mined something there that was used to polish diamonds. But anyway, most of the mountain is gone now, but it's really the basis of a graphic, of a visual that I did, 40 years ago. It is an image of Graves Mountain. And to tie this into things, I have written a piece, actually it's incidental music for a theater piece, and the theater piece is about, of course, Lois is involved in everything, Lois Curtis, and so next Thursday or Friday, there's going to be, here where I live, a celebration for Black History Month. And I am going to read what amounts to 5 last songs that Lois Curtis dictated several weeks before she died back in 22. And I have, over about a year or so, I'm still taking the composition with the what's called the Decatur Fine Arts Academy, which is across the street at the First Baptist Church. But I have incorporated Lois's words with the Phoenix and the Turtle, Shakespeare, and they come out almost perfectly. I'm serious. It was so. Anyway, next week I'm going to read it for the first time, and perhaps we can have a way of. I have actually recorded it, just with my recorder. So anyway, thank you so much. It is wonderful to think of the interrelatedness of everything, really, and thank you so much. So I am finished for the moment.
Thank you, Grover, and best of luck with the reading. That sounds amazing. I'm glad you're doing that.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very excited about it.
Well, as you said, Petra, I think it's time to close the evening for today. But thank you so very much, not only for the beauty of your words, enlightening us, expanding who we think we are and how we interface with the world. Anytime I encounter anything of yours, I always find something new.
Thank you, my dear. It was
the
lovely
depth
to
of
share
your
this with you.
understanding of the world is amazing.
Thank you, sweetie. Thank you. And I'm delighted to being able to share this project with you and the many different voices that are part of the project. So I'm glad I was able to bring you Ashwini and Akila and all of us by the Detroit River. So yay. May you touch a plant elder differently next time you go outside. Okay. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.